And hey, we're live, and we're late, and I'm terribly sorry, but hey, it's free. Hey gang, Yell Chaos here, and welcome to Monday Night Chaos. What I thought was going to be a rather energetic show is actually turning out to be a bit of a somber occasion in my life. Um, Not long after we shared the information that we'd be doing Monday Night Chaos tonight, it was announced that Robin Williams had passed away. And this comes as a bit of a shock to me. I won't speculate on the details of his passing because there are very few to be had. There's lots of speculation so far, but very few solid facts. So we're just going to have to let those things sort themselves out. And then we can, weigh the odds and ends. But it is surprising to me to live in a world without Robin Williams. Pardon me if I have these odd moments of pause. This is just something that's a bit different for me. Because as long as I've been alive, I've lived in a world with Robin Williams in it, for better or for worse. I lived in a world with Robin Williams through Mrs. Doubtfire and all the social misgivings of said feature film. And I apologize for the ums. This is just really strange for me. I also lived through Robin Williams in Bicentennial Man. I'm one of the only people I know of that have gone through the trouble of purchasing a copy of Bicentennial Man. I find it to be a somewhat charming film. And I was also there through that fucking 1 hour photo shit. So, there's that. But yes, you and I, all of us, we now live in a world devoid of Robin Williams, and that's strange because it seems like Robin Williams, in terms of American culture or North American culture, seemed to somehow always permeate and make sure everybody knew that he was still alive, the same way that Billy Crystal and Bette Midler do. And, the consummate, kind of clown and whatever, for better or for worse, I know what you're thinking, it wasn't all peaches and cream. I know, I saw RV. So, I know, I seen it. It was a little painful. Yeah, Jeff Daniels sucked in that movie too. So, that was just a lot of pain to go around that summer. But, yeah, this is really strange for me because I think about, even though I didn't realize it until, today, actually. It had always been kind of the back of my mind, but Robin Williams, regardless of how you feel about him, is representative of a genre of comedy that has seen very little success. And from what success that he has garnered, it is astonishing. He, to me, and, different people will see the history of comedy in different ways. I see, especially his role in stand-up comedy in the 1980s, the rise of stand-up comedy in the 1980s. I find that I won't say he pioneered the style, but he definitely kept it alive in that era where comedy was becoming a little more observational. And he just embodied this madcap style of stand-up comedy, much like Bobcat Goldthwait, for instance. Just that really, I hesitate to say off the wall because that's should really be what comedy is in general. Not all the time, but when you think of comedy, immediately people think of clowns, funny stuff like that. But in an era where comedy became more observational and I guess satirical. I was going to say sarcasm, but sarcasm humor really kind of peaked in the 1950s. before it made its way onto the street and where it's remained ever since. And it's alive and well on the internet, though. I'll fucking tell you that right now. I apologize for using the F word. I knew that was inappropriate because this is a kind of a, I won't call this a eulogy, but this is just an appreciation I realize I have now. I didn't always enjoy his acting work. There's only so many people that you can, but actually I can't think of anybody that I liked all of their movies. No, I can't think of any. If you can think of anybody, lay it on me. Not even Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger did shit too. God damn it. Everyone has betrayed me. But anyway, you and I now live in a world devoid of Robin Williams. And that's something to mourn over. Comedy will never be the same. Of course, comedy hasn't been the same in years. I'm not going to pretend like Robin Williams was still a driving force in comedy. You know, Robin Williams went into business for himself and did quite well for himself. And that's all you can really say. A short, chubby, hairy guy did pretty goddamn well for himself. And that's all there really is to it. I'll miss him, you'll miss him, we'll all miss him. But we'll always have the laughter. So, anyway, gang, I hope you're all having a lovely time right here on Monday Night Chaos. Let's step it up here for a second. I want to see if we got any questions. Apparently, we're working with the Google Hangout live Q&A app thing, and I have no idea how this is supposed to function. So, if eventually I get a question in here, I'll answer it, and if I don't, then I won't. So, I just want you to be aware of the rules, you know, as things stand right now. So, let me see here. I want to see if we have any questions, because we got to brighten the mood here, really, because I think I dwelled on that a bit long, and we'll talk a little more about Robin Williams, hopefully, over the next hour. We'll do our best anyway. That's all you really can do. And if things will start moving in the direction I hope they are, then we'll really have some results around here. I tell you. Let me see. Why is nothing working? See, this is... Every time I need something to work, nothing is working. This is nonsense. See, there's a lot of people telling me about Robin Williams passing, and yeah, it's a real shame. It is. If you guys have any thoughts about Robin Williams, you know, or thoughts in general, you know, please drop them down below, and you know, we'll have a nice little talk, because that's what we do here on Monday Night Chaos. You know, we rap about what I want to rap about, and then we rap about what you guys want to rap about, because you guys are some smart cats, and you always want to talk about really interesting stuff, and I appreciate that, because I go places and it's not quite the case. You know, like bars and shit. Ew. So, you know, don't think I don't appreciate, you know, all the work that you guys put in. Also, while I got a second on my hands here, I wanted to give another shout out to the folks over there hanging out the Hate Podcast Network of Hate on Facebook group. Feels weird to plug a Facebook group. I don't know why that is, but it is. It's weird. It's strange. It's good. But I want you guys to know that I really appreciate all the work that's done in there. And if you do not belong to the Hate Podcast Network of Hate, join today. You'll be thankful you did. I know lots of people thankful that they joined the group. Let me see. Adam Eugene Stansel, who's always got great questions, says, what would be Robin Williams' best movie in my opinion? Robin Williams' best movie? Well, that depends. If you're asking for my personal favorite, I used to say I loved Mrs. Doubtfire, but having watched Mrs. Doubtfire again within the last couple of years, that is just a really odd premise for a movie. No matter how you look at it, it's just an odd premise for a movie. Kind of evil. Well, some of his finest, if I could name some of his finest work, in my opinion, in my estimation, because I'm not a huge fan of feature films. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Feature films have to be fucking great. I apologize for using the F word again. Have to be great for me to really sit through, because you're asking for 2 hours of my life. Do you know what I could do in 2 hours? You know how many games I could shop for in 2 hours? Things like that. You know how many conversations I could have with interesting people? It's not as easy to come by as you'd think. But, you know, 2 hours of my life is a lot. So that's why I don't know or see a lot of movies, even though I do enjoy a fair amount. Anyway, but back to Robin Williams. Robin Williams films. Good Morning Vietnam always comes up. I enjoyed that one, and Bicentennial Man, as we spoke of before. Um, hmm. I don't know if you want to count his stand-up specials. I wouldn't, but those were a big influence to me, for believe it or not. Um, what else? Hmm. I was gonna say Robots, but that movie kind of sucked. You know which one that really I was thinking about right before we came on the air? I was thinking about Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, going way back to 19 something, way back when. And I think saw that one in the theater with. You guys are gonna laugh at me, but this is back. I must have been like 8, and we had to go with the little girls across the street. And we went to see Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. And then I saw that Robin Williams was in it, and even when I was 8, I thought he was funny. Um, that might explain some other things. But anyway, we went to go see this, and I said, oh, Robin Williams is in it, and Robin Williams was funny. And he played, I forget what the Bats character name was. And he was quite entertaining. So. I remember he had a line. What was the line? My favorite line from that movie. Okay, I would say Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, if I really had to pick one. Just pull one out of the air that, which would I say is the best word? That one, because he has a lot of lines in that movie, and he's really good. He was also very good in Aladdin. So, and between Fern Gully and Aladdin, that's a toss-up. Aladdin has better songs. I can say that. And it's, it's obviously a bigger budget film. But they both have Robin Williams, and good stuff. Yeah, he was the genie in there, if you didn't know that. I can never remember what people know and what they don't know, and I can never assume about what people know and what they don't know. I should never make such bold assumptions. Let me see. Mega Gamer X1000 says, I watch your show every week. Well, thank you, Mega Gamer. I appreciate that. And we hope you all just come back every single week. We do our best to put on an entertaining show. And we hope you have a great time. We really do. So, Doku Fox wants to know what I think about Avenged Sevenfold. I think Avenged Sevenfold is a bunch of crap-ola. Interesting note, I don't know if I've told this story before. I'm sure I've told this story at least once before. But I have been to Nick Sanders, the singer for Avenged Sevenfold. I've been to his house. And you might be interested to know that in his garage, he has all 4 of the first Mortal Kombat arcade machines in fantastic working order, along with a lot of promotional posters that you'd see in arcades, if you're old enough to remember going into arcades in the late 80s and early 90s. I picked out the late 80s and early 90s because that's when they got kind of family-friendly. They weren't so teenager-ish and like that. But yeah. And he has a bunch of Mortal Kombat stuff throughout his house. But as far as his band, no, I think his band is a bunch of crapola, and I can't believe they make the money they make. But they're making money, and I hope they're smart enough to save it. So. Lewis Williams wants to know if I think Tom Hanks has ever made a bad film. I'm sure he has. I haven't seen all of them. There was that... the Da Vinci Code, there was that. So, yeah, nobody's infallible. Nobody's infallible. I know that for certain. Merit 2014 says, what do I think of Cloak of Duty Advanced Identity Crisis? Merit, if that's some, underhand, left-wing, sarcastic code for something to do with Call of Duty. I don't know what that means, so please clarify. I'm not as hip on the neo gaff and all this slang lingo as I could be, I guess. Um, Sprites and Bytes liked 1 Hour Photo. Well, that's good. I'm glad somebody had to like it. I hope they made their money back on it. I just didn't care for it. It wasn't my speed. Maybe I'll try it again. Maybe I won't. You never know. Sorry, I'm just trying to kind of come out of that funk, because it's strange that we do live in a world without Robin Williams. And that might not sound very important on the surface of it. If you really dig down and think about it in terms of just television, he was part of some groundbreaking stuff on television, and now that potential driving force is gone. So, let me see here. I don't know if... Oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out this damn app thing. So, if you guys can figure it out, cool. If not, I'm terribly sorry. What did he say? Ian Hutchinson wants to know what I think of the movie Hook. I thoroughly enjoyed Hook. I thought Hook was very good. And Dustin Hoffman did a very good job. I can't say I can really complain about that movie. Phil Collins was in it, which is good. And Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins is good all the time. Yeah, thoroughly a triumphant film. I enjoy it very much. And I hope all of you do. Julia Roberts kind of sucks. Yeah, if Tinkerbell could have been somebody else, that would have helped that movie out immensely. But you can't have everything. So, let me see here. Super North Show says, "What is my opinion of the flood of HD remakes that have been announced recently?" He says that he, for one, would prefer to get new games, especially when they're throwing out old games slightly touched up for $60. I'll paraphrase. I really can't say that I'm against it. I mean, if there's a market for it, by all means, go for it. For instance, I just got the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD for the Wii U. It was cheap, but and I don't have that one on the GameCube, so it worked out for me. I'm one of those people that fell into that demographic who needed it. I'm not opposed to them. I really feel that they should go with it until it stops working. I don't know if it has stopped working. That's another thing about gaming that's interesting, the gaming industry, is how the gaming industry has become such a spectator sport. I know I have a podcast built around that concept, and I don't say this to rain on anybody's parade or anything, but it's just become such a spectator sport that just because you're bored doesn't mean that these companies aren't still making money from it in some way. Now, whether they sell or not, that seems to work on a more individual basis. So I just think that it seems like it's a good business decision. It doesn't mean that it's exciting. But the gaming industry is doing now very much like what it did before the Nintendo really took off, which is not on the same scale. I don't want to really compare the crash of 83, 84 to what we're going with right now, because it's not like that. It's not that bad. We're just talking in terms of economies of scale. But right now they're being very conservative. They're only going with places where they're going to make a certain amount of money, and that's a slippery slope. That's a dangerous place to be, because that's how you also drive down demand. So yeah, hopefully they'll make their money and notice, because eventually you're going to get to a point where they will start selling less. They absolutely will, especially when they're HD remaking games that are less than 1 year old from release. I mean, and then of course the HD remake, if the game's that recent, then it takes no time at all. A team of 60, 70, 150 people, it takes no time at all to crank that sort of thing out because most of it is already done. And I almost get the idea, like HD remake has kind of become the new way to say player's choice or greatest hit or best seller. And I think that's weird. I really do. Because HD remake has very specific connotations. When you say a high definition remake, that is to suggest that the original title was not high def to begin with. But if the original title was high def, then that suggests that you should have just called it a remake or reloaded, or one of those funky SNK terms that they always use for sequels, X, something like that. I don't know. I just think that they should go with it until it stops working, and once it stops working, I hope they have some creativity left to get the fires rolling again. Because at this point, it's kind of like watching a rat swim with its leg tethered to the bottom of whatever it's swimming in, and you just don't know. And not in the grand scheme of things, but in a figurative sense, obviously. I think I'm being very figurative just then. So, but HD remakes, I really think that if they're going to go with them until they stop working. Because once they stop working, where is the next dumbed down step? Where is the next, or the next least easiest thing? Because that's what's going to happen. It's going to go like a step down one level, and where does it go from there? They're only making DLC. What are they doing? And we'll see. Time will tell. That's the beautiful thing, is we're going to look back on this years from now and say, what the fuck, people paid money for that? It's insane. That's why people think I'm crazy for collecting Game Informer magazines. I'm not, because I make sure I get them for free, or, for like a nickel. But I hope in 5, 10, because a lot of people think of retro games in the space of 1978 through 1989 or 1992 or something like that, and you realize that we're going to look back on this 10 years from now and look at this as old games, depending on what games are doing by then, because they'll be different, but probably not that different. Because really, the human brain hasn't evolved that much, so there's really only so much you can do, but you can still find ways to entertain people. I honestly believe this. I espouse that every single week on this program. You guys know it, and I know it. Because it's the truth. Absolutely, right down to the ground. So, we were trying to talk about happy things, weren't we? I'm going to cut myself off right there because it's getting too real right now. Let's talk about happier things. Like let me see. Kit 171, who apparently shows up to every live stream ever. I don't know where this guy gets the time. He's everywhere where he wants to be when he wants to be there. Kit 171, I salute you. I wish I could say this is clear liquor, but it is not. Because then it would be a toast, not necessarily a salute. Let me see. Kit 171 says, "Did you like the Rock Band or Guitar Hero series more?" I don't know if we've ever discussed that. That's funny how you immediately assume that I've had experience with those, because everybody did, because it's just they were fucking everywhere. It was insane. I have no experience at all with the Rock Band series. None to speak of. Um, I know it was designed to more, I guess, replicate the concept or idea of playing in a band together, but I just thought it was stupid because I already played in a band, so I didn't feel I needed to play in a make-believe band too, you know. So I never got into that. But the guys in my band liked Guitar Hero for a time. I got into like Guitar Hero 2, and then Guitar Hero 3 came out, and they replaced all the cover recordings with the actual recordings, and that was a serious turnoff for me. Like, I don't like this. This doesn't sound like playing in a band. This sounds like a record is playing. And I didn't like it, so that I kind of stopped right there. We still have the Guitar Hero stuff. I've been meaning to break it out and do something with it. And I'm seeing Rock Band and Guitar Hero shit showing up at the Dollar Tree and at the Dollar Tree, that's right. So, wasn't a good time for those folks. Or maybe it was, I don't know. Those are kind of like the Atari cartridges of their day. Because, you know, you go to the thrift stores, they can't give that shit away. You know, and I would take one, you know, if I, but they're so ew, because people have been ewing all over them. You know what I mean. You know. Sprites and Bites says, what do you feel about games and pre-order bonus items? How do you feel about them? I don't mind pre-order bonus items if they're an actual fucking item. Just using all sorts of foul language this evening. I don't care as long as they're an item. They're something tangible, something that you feel is worth your trouble and time for dedicating some of your hard-earned money to some company that is probably selling you a broken piece of software. They know it, and you're just in denial about it. So, I hate to have such a cynical attitude about things like that, because that's something that bothers me and why I've been so hesitant with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Well, number one, because there's zero software that intrigues me, which makes me sad. I cannot tell you how often, because sometimes when I'm at my mother's house, that's the only time I see television, when I'm at my mother's house, and the thing comes on Xbox, and I'm like, oh, what are they going to show? And then it's like a fucking Madden game, or that stupid driving game, I forget what it's, Forza or whatever. And I was like, well, I've seen that. When are you going to show something cool? You know, they don't even show shooter games in the TV commercials. And every once in a while, I'll come across a newer game mag, and I'll check it out, and it's nothing. And I cannot believe that I'm actually rooting for these damn companies to get off their dust and do something. Please. You guys picked the wrong time to just, you know, play it cool. It's fine when one company does it, like people complain about the Nintendo droughts. But that's cool, because if you realize, for the real hardcore Nintendo fans who buy the games the day they come out, you know, you saw, you know, in the late spring where like 6 or 7 Nintendo games came out in succession over the course of, you know, 2.5 months. And people bought them, and it's like, well, this is a chance to give your wallet a rest. The problem is, now 2 players are not doing anything. They're advertising hardware, but they're not giving you any reason to buy the hardware. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only person on the planet who feels like this, but I know for a fact that Alpha Omega Sin and Return to Mother Base, their PlayStation 4s do nothing. I know that. And that makes me sad. Because these machines are to be played, they're to be enjoyed. You know, makes me sad that some of the stuff I have doesn't get used on a regular basis, but it does get used. You know, it's important. You know, so it's a shame. It's a real shame. You know? And it's a shame that we have to live in a world that is the way it is right now. Not only for the sake of video games, but in general. But we'll talk about happy things. A lot of people take video games, make them all damn depressing. And I don't think I care for that. But, you know, that's what they do. But, yeah, to conclude my point, I don't mind the pre-order bonuses, you know, so long as they're going to give you something that you feel is worth your time and effort. Because gasoline, or for my folks in Europe, petrol, is expensive. to get in your car, to get in your motor car and drive your machine all the way across town or whatever to into the place to deal with some guy who's probably kind of smelly and has a dirty shirt and doesn't know how to work the damn computer in the first place. The one guy at the GameStop that doesn't know how to work assuming you're going to a GameStop, that doesn't know how to work the register. You're losing 40 minutes of your life, and then you go back home and you're tired now. And what are they going to give you? An extra uniform to put on Chris Redfield, and it's a bunch of crapola. But if you feel it's worth your time to get an extra uniform for Chris Redfield, by all means, kill yourself, actually, because you're part of the problem. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. But just what I'm trying to say through all of that is that you as a consumer deserve better. You know it, and they certainly know it. But they're not going to let you know that they know it, because then you're going to ask for it. Then you're going to demand it, and then you're going to stop giving them money. That's what I encourage everyone in this program to do. If you don't like the way things are going, stop giving them your money. Stop funding the terrorism that is being rained upon you in your everyday life. Maybe on a small level, but the fact remains it's still there. Sorry, I don't mean to point so much. God damn it. Hoffman Hunter wants to know my top 5 wrestlers of all time. Hoffman, I could never condense it down to 5. When people ask who's my favorite wrestler, I really couldn't tell you. If I would tell you my favorite wrestler from when I was a kid was Bret Hart, Bret the Hitman Hart, and still is. If you were to ask me what wrestler would I want to watch wrestle a match right now, Bret Hart. There are very few bad Bret Hart matches that I'm aware of. A few of them involving Jim Neidhart, but we won't talk about that. The Anvil, he did his best. He had that goatee going on, and a beret, wore a pink leather beret. So, or it was felt or something. I don't know, but it was a beret and it was pink, and I wouldn't fuck with him. Great big guy, wears pink. You just, let sleeping dogs lie. Oh, and he's got a hot daughter too. So, kudos to Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Let me see. If I were to put a top 5, though, I think Bret Hart and Owen Hart would also be on that list. Absolutely. Let me see here. I'm sorry, I'm reading comments. Kits171 said they should call all these game releases they keep doing Redux. It sounds cooler. I guess, but it sounds very European, at least to my mind, and Americans don't always like that. Never understood how they think that this shit's going to play in the sticks, but they wanted to have an online-only console. That's poetic. I'm surmising. I'm probably using a great deal of hyperbole. On the other hand, if you really look at the steps they've taken, they clearly don't understand their audience. Or realizing that giving it all back makes them look like shit. They haven't figured that out yet either. I understand that Microsoft losing $400 million so far on the Xbox brand, Xbox One brand. That's a real shame. Of course, the only thing I could think to say was, yeah, that's kind of what happens when your major draw, your primary draw, is a $500 remote control. Xbox on. Ian Hutchinson says, talking about the HD remakes, says releasing a year-old game to next-gen hardware is not going to push the sales. Like, well, I don't know. They all certainly thought that with the Wii U launch. So maybe lightning will strike twice. So now that I thought about it, yeah, you're right. They haven't really rethought this approach, have they? One day they'll see. Unfortunately, they'll be standing on an unemployment line when they do it, but they'll see. Let's see. Adam Eugene Stancil, my man, says, would you be interested in seeing Sting have one more match? I don't know if I've talked about this. Stop me if I've discussed this, but I saw the initial promo when they did the commercial for how Sting is going to be special DLC or something in WWE 2K14. I don't know if I've made my feelings clear about that, but he has no significance to that company at all. Why is he in the video game? All that is just pandering to a demographic who claims they want it. And they probably do, but I really think that's just a cash grab, and it's stupid. And it makes wrestling look like shit. Well, or at least they're wrestling. And everyone talking about how WrestleMania 31, they want Sting and The Undertaker. Two old guys. Undertaker's like 50 and Sting is like 56. And he's had a fair share of injuries. I mean, if you think that the streak-ending match at WrestleMania 30 was crummy, imagine these two broken down old guys. Because Brock Lesnar, love him or hate him, I happen to despise him, is still in great shape and can still move and do all that stuff. He always has. He can wrestle a bit. But I don't like him. I think he's a dickhead and a tool, but, what I think doesn't matter. They pay him, and good for them, or good for him, or mostly good for him, I'm sure. I wish, him and The Rock and Hogan are like the three guys that are professional wrestling or sports entertainment icons who never show up, but can show up anytime and just be over. That's fantastic to me. I wish I could do that. But anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. Sting and Undertaker, two broken down old guys at WrestleMania 31. I would liken it to like a big show on the indie scene in like the early 90s, which would be like Bobo Brazil and Pedro Morales at like the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. Don't get me wrong, WrestleMania 31 will be a much bigger place than the Olympic Auditorium. But at the same time, it's going to be two broken down old guys past their prime who are really just showing up for A, a payday, and B, because they feel that's what people want, and people feel that's what they want, and then they're going to see it, and they're going to hate it, and there's going to be that black guy that went, and that whole thing, and people are going to say this, So similarly, I think it'll have all the same level of hype, and it'll have all the same level of disappointment, just like Starrcade 97. I honestly believe that. And the trouble is, the whole damn card will take a back seat to this match. And if that's going to be the coup de grace, what kind of crapola would they put underneath it? Freaking Wyatt family gonna push down Hornswoggle, and then El Torito and the whole, and oh Christ. Mega Gamer X1000 says, who do I think will buy Capcom? Hopefully nobody. As much as I'm pretty sure I've espoused these feelings before, as much as I would like to see some of those brand names live on and carry over into other things, and like that. To buy Capcom at this stage in the game, if you'll pardon the little pun there, I didn't do that on purpose. At this stage in the game, for what they're worth, not just short term, but long term. And when you look at just the mountain of debt they are under, I mean, this wouldn't be like, like when, the Commodore people, the Tremels, when they bought Atari, and Atari was a failing company. and some kind of shady business dealings went down to really make that happen. Um, what would today be considered shady business dealings? But I don't think the Federal Trade Commission was really looking in their direction at the time. Um, and you know, they're all dead now, so it doesn't matter. But just to look at the Capcom company, they are under a mountain of debt, and they have a sullied name in the eyes of the consumer. Still, I remember I did the video. Some of you guys may remember from way back when, a few years ago, where I did the year in gaming something or other, and it was Capcom giving the middle finger to everybody else. For those of you that were with me way back when, that was probably like 8-Bit Podcast Season 1, I think, or before, I don't know. And I honestly thought that in the ensuing years that things would improve, and they have a little, but not so much that you'd notice. And so, you have to wonder. But I really think it would be a bad business move for anybody, because at least in the short term. In the short term, would it eventually pay off? Possibly, but you would have to assume a major turnaround in the demand of their properties, their products, because they don't really produce that much tangibles that I'm aware. I mean, Japan could be different. I don't live in Japan, so I don't experience that on a daily basis, and I don't know that. But, and I'm sure Mega Man sells, smartphones and stuff in Japan. I'm sure he does, but or whatever. But there would need to be a major turnaround in the next 4 or 5 years with what it is that Capcom supplies for it to be worth anybody's risk to buy a company, that's holding so much solid asset but very little liquid asset. And, at the end of the day, what are the properties really worth? You could license them out for TV shows, as we found out someone's going to do today for some reason. I don't know why that seems like such a good idea to people. I really don't. But hey, if it makes a couple of bucks, I'm happy for you. I'm not giving you any money. But, I guess there's money in that, I would assume. But unless, there's a real turnaround in either the video game industry or the video game merchandising industry, which is, an offshoot, not exactly the same thing, I don't see things improving for the Capcom portfolio no matter how you slice it. You could present evidence to me and you can use statistics to say this and that, but, anybody who's anybody would know that there's 3 things in this world. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And they all kind of push you in one direction or another. There's more than 3 things in this world, but you know what I mean. And you can present all the evidence you want to me, and I really don't see. There would need to be incentive for, because they're in a big hole, and there would need to be incentive for there to be some way that this company can dig itself out of a hole outside. Because, like I said, the only thing they would really have outside of another video game boom would be, and smartphones are not going to be the place. I'm sorry. That's already has shown that that's not going to be where the next boom is, because there's a bunch of cheap bastards on the smartphone thing, because smartphones are expensive. They already spent $700 on it, or they got a contract, and well, we can talk about contracts some other time. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah. So I don't think someone buying Capcom is a good business deal for anybody unless they start selling off the properties piecemeal, which is what it may come down to, and what a lot of business savvy, people in the software business are probably looking forward to. There's sharks in those waters right now. So that's the funny thing, is even though it looks like the video game industry, is hurting here and there, there's people who are starting to buy up things and getting ready for this thing to take off again. And will it? Don't know. We'll find out. Excuse me. Whew. I try not to be rude here on the Chaos program. Referring back to Bret Hart, Lewis Williams says Bret Hart's worst match was the one with Vince McMahon. I don't recall that one, but they were old men by that time. That's not the same thing. Bret Hart wasn't an active wrestler. Let me see here. What do I think of the firing of Alberto Del Rio? That's a shame. He's a pretty good worker. I don't think he's very charismatic. Now, mind you, I don't. When I watch wrestling, I don't even watch promos anymore. Promos can kiss my butt. In-ring promos, I'll give it a second. But interstitial promos, like that crap that Bray Wyatt does with the things swinging and, it looks like they're in a dry martini commercial, I swear. Or Zima. Excuse me. Getting a little hoarse there. I don't watch that, but, Alberto Del Rio to me is not very charismatic, but he's a good worker. So whatever, indie promotion or TNA, if they're ever going to have a show still, because I understand that they still haven't found a home for their program yet, or ROH or any of the, more prolific independent promotions in North America or overseas. He could go to Japan because Japan, I guess, is getting a little healthier again. Touch. He could do that. So, talented kid that a lot of people would be lucky to have. Just as long, but they need to figure out a way to market him because right now all he is a good-looking, dark-skinned kid. That can only take you so far. Fine worker, though. Melphus Sky says, do you find it ironic that they are constantly talking about the Wii U being inferior, and yet games like Wind Waker HD can run at native 1080p, 30 frames per second, but the best Thief 4 can do is Xbox One is 900p? I don't really invest too much stock in what those assholes have to say about frame rate and, bandwidth and, hertz frequencies. I don't pay any attention to that shit. It's just who's got the games, who's got something to sell come Christmas time. That's really all it's about. And is it worth your time and effort? Those are not always the same thing. But yeah, it's interesting people talking about the Wii U being inferior with no evidence to support such claims. In terms of processor speed, sure, but when did processor speed ever do anything for you directly? Probably in ways passively, like blast processing, But that's video game kayfabe. That's the BS that they marketed to us and to you kids probably now still in the magazines and in the comic books. The comic books are filled with lies about video game consoles. That's why I call myself. Something I do amongst, when Mrs. Chaos and I are talking about video games. I refer to the Atari Jaguar as a kayfabe 64-bit console. It's only a 64-bit console in terms of its marketing. But, on the other hand, if people buy into it, then, perception is reality in many instances. Adam Stansel wants to know what do I think about the issues between TNA and Spike TV. And something about Vince Russo. I don't know that Vince Russo still works there. I think he's gone, and him and Razor Fist are fucking around doing something. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But the issues between TNA and Spike TV, I mean, I don't know. Since when is Spike TV in a position to be canceling shows? I mean, who is busting their freaking balls to be on Spike TV? Anybody? I would be hard pressed to think of any show that is just dying to be on Spike TV with the dying subscribership that they have. Because they went for all extreme stuff and that ran itself into the ground. People got tired of it. You know, the late '90s extreme mentality. You know, it only comes around every so often. It only lasts for a little while. Let me see. Nicholas Kennedy wants to know my favorite Iced Earth song. It's funny you brought that up. Nicholas Kennedy, Ultra Brutal Fatality. It's funny you brought that up because I'm actually listening to all of the Iced Earth, actually all of John Schaefer's material from the beginning to the end to find that out. I would have to break it down by album because there's quite a few good ones in there still. Um, I have different feelings about different albums. If I were to pick one, if I could go, my favorite older song. Let me think. Give me a minute. Give me a second. Give me a second. I would have to go with Burnt Offerings. And if I were to go with and then a latter day song would either be The Reckoning or um, Come What May from The Crucible of Man. And a lot of people don't like that album. I actually preferred that album over Framing Armageddon, and for some reason a lot of people think that Framing Armageddon's a better album, and I think you're all crazy. Like a fox. Sigma Sean asks if Capcom were to sell off individual IPs, what companies would buy which IPs, do you think? That really depends because I think when you're asking is in terms of video games, but I think that marketing companies might buy up those IPs, a lot of them, to use for advertising purposes. And I really think that. I'm sure Nintendo would, try and get their hands on, a few things. I'm sure they'd try and get their hands on Mega Man. I'm sure they'd try and get their hands on the Resident Evil series. Hopefully they can turn that around. Maybe them and Tecmo Koei could, figure out a way to turn that around. Or somebody else. I'm trying to think who would be good to do that. Who's still together? That'd be interesting if Retro could put a stamp on a new Resident Evil, but that's pie in the sky. I don't know. It's really hard to say. Electronic Arts, I really think that they're still taking a great big shit nap. I think that they're having a great time. They seem to be quite content with their own hubris to sit around and just thumb the status quo. So I really don't expect much from them. Ubisoft would probably be smart to pick up some of that stuff because whether you realize it or not, Ubisoft owns like freaking everything. If you can think of a software publisher, if you're about my age or even or younger or older, if you can remember a software publisher from like the late '80s and early '90s that went out of business, like Bruderbund and Bruderbund's the one that sticks out. Damn, I'll get back to you on that one. But like Bruderbund, for instance, Ubisoft owns it. They picked up a lot of those software companies that went out of business in the mid to late '90s or early 2000s, and they don't hardly put out any freaking games. I mean, they put out more games than some people, but like, it's amazing how you have the rights to all of this stuff and you don't use any of it. So I don't know. I think Ubisoft would be smart to pick up those, and they would probably sell them off, flip them for advertising purpose, sell them to an advertising firm. I don't know that, but they would be smart too, because, like I said, Ubisoft is sitting on tons of licenses that they do nothing with. Nintendo's doing the same thing, but, can't always get what you want. I would say the Nintendo uses more of their IPs in one way or another than Ubisoft does, because Ubisoft, like I said, Ubisoft owns the Carmen Sandiego, if I'm not mistaken. Unless they've sold it off by now. But I think they, at one point, owned the uh, the Rise of Carmen Sandiego. Snazzy Grant wants to know what my favorite Creed song is. My favorite Creed song is the one that's at the end of the record, because that means it's over. Adam Stanza wants to know what video game would I want to see made into a movie. None. I don't like video games being turned into movies. Some movies can make good video games. There are plenty of instances of that. That's of course the exception and not the rule. I don't like the concept of video games being turned into movies because I don't know. I don't feel that there's a need to translate. I don't feel that video games do translate into movies. It's a completely different experience than watching a movie. I don't know who got this idea that that those two things appeal to the same audiences. Of course, there's crossover because they're both they're both mainstream experiences, but they're not the same audience. And just because people enjoy video games or people because they enjoy movies does not mean they will enjoy both in the same capacity. That's a very unhealthy assumption to make. But there are movies that turn into pretty good video games, like The Warriors and Scarface and so on, as I've talked about here on this program a number of times. Let me see here. Lewis Williams wants to know what's my opinion of the YouTuber Solid Rev. I haven't the vaguest idea who that is. Is he mean to you, Lewis, or what? I have no idea who he is. Or her. I would assume it's him because it's predominantly men that do this sort of thing here on YouTube, obviously. If the beard didn't tell you. Let me see here. Cowmilk 9999 says, "Are you planning anything big for Halloween this year?" I'm looking into a few things. I don't want to give anything away yet. Not sure. I got a couple of ideas, so hopefully it's special this year. We try to make it special every year. And I'll try and do Monday Night Chaos every week throughout the month of October. We're going to try and do that. If you guys will show up, you got to make sure that you show up. Because if you don't, then I'll throw things at you. Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. We'll try and have a good time. If I could recommend anything during the month of October, is that to watch James Rolfe. Many of you know James Rolfe over there on Cinemassacre.com, where he does the Monster Madness every year over on his channel. I recommend that highly. Every day in October, he's got a new review for a horror movie or something kind of Halloween themed, and that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. So I recommend you go check that out. And like I said, I'll try and have as much content up during the month of October here. But I also try and take in the month of October because around here, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna do as much as I possibly can to make October a really neat month this year. So let me see. Emmanuel De Luna wants to know my favorite Star Fox title. I'm gonna have to go with Star Fox 64 3D, actually. Some people will argue that the 3DS version of that game is a bit easier than the 64 version. I'd have to agree. That would depend on the condition of your Nintendo 64 controller, because that analog stick on some controllers wears out faster than others. That's just a design flaw. It is reparable, but it's difficult. So anyway, But on the 3DS version, it is, I guess, a bit more assistive. But the controls are so fluid. There's nothing frustrating about it. You can knock it out a bit faster than you could on the N64. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But that's my favorite, if I were to pick. But my favorite from a nostalgia standpoint is the original Star Fox. I love the music from the original Star Fox. The same way I love the music from the original F-Zero. Both of them, I have the soft spot in my heart for both of those titles having debuted on the Super Nintendo because I have a very high opinion of the Super Nintendo. Adam Stansel wants to know would I rather watch an episode of WCW Thunder from 2000 or a current episode of TNA. It's funny you say that because I often compare the two. Um, I actually prefer WCW Thunder. At least Bobby Heenan was still there in some capacity. So I can say that. Let me see here. Robert Sanders wants to know what best indie promo currently. I don't know what you mean. Do you mean a sale on indie games in the Nintendo eShop, or do you mean an independent professional wrestling organization? Please clarify. Let me see here. Any old video game store stories? No, I have. If you guys don't know this by now, I avoid video game stores as best I can. I only go into video game stores in very select situations, very select occasions. The couple of them in Las Vegas, even though I don't recommend going there, I go to see what they have on clearance. I'll be perfectly honest. That's the reason I go to most electronic stores. F your retail price. So I don't really have any stories. I know that there's a game store not far from here, more toward the ocean, and the owner's a jerk off, and his store is disgusting. So does that count as a video game store story? Even in my youth, I didn't spend much time in video game stores because I lived in kind of a little crummy town that didn't have any sort of that. So we had to go to the other end, to the next town over, and that always sucked. It really did. That town was called Moreno Valley, by the way, in California. I understand it still sucks to this day, so. Tyler Bora wants to know, is there an IP that a company owns? I don't know who owns what to see raised from the pile into a new game. Yeah. Well, I can't really say that anymore. I asked for a new Bonks game, and I got one, and I still haven't bought it, and I feel like kind of a tool. Aside from, all the ones I would think would be major, I'd like to see something really cool done with Contra. I believe that the the running gun in the style of Contra is underutilized. It's quite utilized in the mobile market, I know that, but in terms of not even AAA, make it a mid-tier game. Don't obsess so much over visuals, but just maybe lighten up on the difficulty to bring in some more people, but not too much. I think that game, there's potential for that. You can finally, it wouldn't be, a brand new start, but it'd be something else. Shooting, but in a different direction. You know what I mean? Let me see here. Melfa Scott wants to know what I think of Japanese black metal bands like Deer and Grey. I enjoy Deer and Grey. Deer and Grey and Abigail and what was that other band? Octopus? was somebody else. Ah, well, if it comes to me, I'll bring it up. Yeah, I enjoy that sort of thing. I like a lot of I like a lot of Japanese metal bands. Ian Hutchinson says he's going to Tokyo, Japan next week, and if I have any travel tips, I've never been to Tokyo, Japan. I understand to bring money. I know that part, and don't assume because you're in Japan that there's not shady people around. And if you're so inclined, it is perfectly legal to have whale bacon in Japan. It's perfectly legal for them to slaughter whales for their bacon. So I understand it's gross, but like I said, if you're so inclined, there's that. I don't even know that they cook it. I think it's served in sushi restaurants. So either be on the lookout or beware. If I got the opportunity to be a referee in any 90s or 80s wrestling match, what would it be and why? I wouldn't want to referee in any match that I've seen because I'm afraid that I would mess it up. I like those matches to exist the way they are. Because being a referee is more than just being in the ring and watching the match unfold. The referee is part of the action, and part of the mystery and the show that unfolds before your eyes and in your imagination. That's a tool that is missing from professional wrestling, is playing off the imagination of the audience. No one does that anymore, and I think that's because we live in an era where everyone is just absolutely marinated in electronic entertainment at any given time, and you can have what you want right now. So that's one thing that I'm thinking missing from professional wrestling. Sorry if I'm ruining your question, Adam, but I wouldn't want to interfere in those matches. I really wouldn't. That would change history. And sometimes history is kind of neat the way it was. Not always, though. Somebody thinking of getting a Wii U at the end of this year and hoping there's good games. Well, there's going to be plenty of good games this holiday. There's a ton of good games on it now. I recommend it highly. Watch my Wii U collection video. I did it not too long ago. Check that out. You'll see some fantastic games for the Wii U. Check that out. And what movies have I seen lately? I haven't seen any movies. I just don't care to go to the movies or to really see movies. Mrs. Yo Chaos and myself, in preparation for Full Metal Vegas 8. We were watching The Hangover, and that movie is a turd. That is one of the most horrible movies I have ever seen, and I really want to bite the producers of that film in the face. Ugh. And let me see. Robert Sanders wants to know. Rob Bott wants to know the best indie wrestling promotion. In my opinion, the best indie wrestling promotion, at least in the Western states. I couldn't say for the East Coast, but in the Western states is SoCal Pro Wrestling here in San Diego County. I've been to a lot of independent wrestling organizations. I've seen a lot of shows from a lot of places, and they do a great job. Depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for a lot of hardcore stuff, that's not as easy to come by. This appeals a little more to the kids, just a touch. But it's a good balance. It's a great time, and they do a good job. I recommend them very highly. So for more information, go to SoCalProWrestling.com. This concludes our shameless plug. Ian Hutchinson wants to know my favorite all-time wrestling promo. I don't really like promos. If I could think of who threw the best promos, I could say the Macho Man Randy Savage threw some of the best promos, just because he was so intense. I don't know if they sprayed him down or if that was natural sweat, but he was just intense. But I want to refer you, actually, to a great collection of promos I saw um, on the internet. I forget who put it up. I think somebody in the Hate Bit Podcast Network of Hate put this up. It was what was it called? Absolutely No Words, and it was a bunch of wrestling promos with Sergeant Slaughter and Meng and the Mad Dog Vachon, and who else was in that one? The Macho Man and so on. And it was all the everything but the words, just breathing and laughing, and it's you got to look at it. It's you really do. I recommend it highly. This is Yale Chaos. We laughed at that for a solid 4 or 5 minutes. Mega Gamer wants to know if I could choose any game series to have a reboot. Which would I choose? I don't like reboots. I like sequels. I like a continuation. Well, that would depend on if you had a new story to tell. That's really what breaks it down for me. Because I'd love to see a new Star Tropics. I really would. But do they have a story to tell in that world, in that context? That's what I wonder. I'd love to see, Takamura from Mysterious Murasame Castle. I'd love to see him go on another adventure, but do they have a story to tell? Because it's been so long. You need a compelling story. And I really think that that would end up coming off more like Ninja Gaiden. And we already have Ninja Gaiden. So, unless it would be another top-down game, then, and then if you really had a way to make a true sequel, which you could if there's only one game, then it's possible. But, top-down games are, not terribly common. On the other hand, The Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds is pretty damn fantastic, so not out of the realm of possibility. And Star Tropics has always seemed to borrow quite a bit from The Legend of Zelda. So, why not? Imagine they'd have to test the waters, though, with something like that. It'd have to be like an eShop exclusive game, so that way they're not putting too much effort behind a game from a series that nobody remembers. And it would also be a very difficult series to jog people's memories, because I think most people remember the label and not necessarily the big details of the game. But it does have an iconic cover. It's got a great name too, Star Tropics. Robert Sanders says 7 people were shot at a party in Merino Valley. Oh, okay. Okay, well that happens. That's a shame. Lupacilla says there was a bonk for WiiWare, but it got canceled. I guess it did get canceled. Okay, that's why I didn't get it then. Okay, I'm not quite the jerk that I thought I was. Lupacilla wants to know if I'm getting the Amiibo figures. Maybe, if the price is right. I will not be purchasing them before Christmas. I probably will not purchase them until, closer to my birthday next year, maybe. I'm going to see how they fare, because if they don't sell well, then they'll reduce the price. So, we'll see. I hope it does well. They look cool. They look neat. I'm always in favor of things that are collectible. So there's that. Kit170 says, Kit171 asks, what is the most annoying character I've ever encountered in a game? Most annoying character? I would have to say Sherry Birkin from Resident Evil 2. Just because she's kind of useless, and I know she's a little girl, but she's kind of useless. And I just felt like that was a cheap way to lengthen the game. It's like, here, let's send them into a realm of impossibility. A little girl versus vomiting zombies. Damn it. Yeah, I would say that sticks out. That and the professor from Tetris Plus by Jalico. You'd have to play that game to know what I mean. He's a real asshole. Rob Bot says we should have watched Vegas Vacation. It's coming up. And I want to know on this program, I don't allow any bad mouthing of the National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation, even though it's not really a National Lampoon's movie. But I don't acknowledge that, and I don't allow any of that. There will be no bad mouthing of Vegas Vacation. Mr. Papa Giorgio forbids it. Nicholas Kennedy says, what do you think about overpriced LPs? I think you mean vinyl albums. I hope so, that's what you mean. Yeah, they're really expensive. The new pressings, Metallica's Ride the Lightning for like $25. Like, I know these things don't cost that much to press, and you're not licensing anything. It's a cash grab. Buy your vinyl, buy vintage vinyl. Vintage vinyl like Laserdisc. Well, Laserdiscs are starting to go up in price in certain places, I heard. But yeah, go buy your vinyl at thrift stores. If you can't find it there, you didn't need it that badly, and you don't need to be paying $25 for an album you've already heard just to hear it on simulated audio or simulated analog audio. Because that's the thing, the new vinyl is not coming from an analog source all the time. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So sometimes it's a digital source going on to vinyl. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having it on vinyl in the first place. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then just stick to MP3s and you'll have a great time. Don't worry about it. Just like the people that get into retro games, and I say, well, do you have a coaxial input? And they go, what's a coaxial? I was like, forget it. Just give up. Just play an emulator on your phone, because otherwise you might hurt yourself or others. Ian Hutchinson says that Supreme Pro Wrestling is pretty good in Sacramento. I've heard good things about Supreme Pro Wrestling. I've never been, but there's a couple of people that I deal with, that I talk to down here, that are from Northern California and say Supreme's pretty good. So there's that. Let me see. Can I say Paramount in a British accent? I don't do a British accent. I don't know what would give you the idea that I do a British accent. Pardon me. I'm getting a little hoarse. Ian Hutchinson says, Pissed Jose for the Hate Bit podcast. Is that a vote? Are you requesting? Are you demanding? I don't understand. Eugene Stansel says, if there is one wrestler you would want to have one more good run, whether it be WWE or TNA, who would it be and why? For me, I would have to go to the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. I love him for him to have one more run in WWE, provided he is healthy enough to do it. I've never felt that Ken Shamrock has any form of charisma of any kind, so I was not surprised when he didn't really go places in the World Wrestling Federation. He did some things. He had done wrestling before that, though. He had done, what do you call it? Rings, which is more of a shoot-styled professional wrestling thing. But, yeah. I never felt that he really... I don't really think about that, who should get another run. I really think of who is going to come up and save professional wrestling, because right now it's a bunch of old dudes and a bunch of young dudes who have no idea what they're doing, and a few veterans in the middle who are having to hold things down. One or two of them having the last name Rhodes. But let me see. Ian Hutchinson says that Vegas Vacation is better than European Vacation, and he is right. And with that, I'm sorry, guys. That's my time. I'm out of here. You guys are great. I really appreciate you coming out for Monday Night Chaos, but I really must be on my way. I want to remind you to subscribe if you haven't already, and also follow me on the Facebook, follow me on the Twitter, and all that sort of thing. You'll find links down below, so once again, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You guys are beautiful, and I am your Chaos. You guys take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.